work you are doing in your region to reduce disaster risk?
IUCN is an organization that was recently set up in Fiji to deal with issues of nature conservation, disaster adaptation. And it focuses on undertaking research, generating new knowledge, managing knowledge to assist member countries and members to make informed decisions, and decisions that deals with governance, management strategies aimed at improving the livelihoods of people and conserving nature. It also is assisting governments and countries to adopt and adapt ecosystem-based approaches to livelihood improvements, disaster risk reduction, and climate change adaptation. The third component of it is very much to do with empowerment and capacity development of individuals, communities, governments, and institutions.
What actions contribute to reducing the risk of extreme events? Please describe an initiative in your country or region that reduces disaster risk and helps people adapt to climate change.
Okay. I think if you think about reducing risks, there are short-term and long-term reduction in risk that we can talk about. In the long term, you wouldn't be talking about ensuring that the government has got policies and strategies in place that supports communities to minimize their own risks. In the short term, reducing risks also would mean empowering the individuals and communities to a level where they can adapt to the residual risks on their own. Just to give you an example, we all know that disasters affect poverty level, and poverty also exacerbates the outcomes of disaster. So the activities of IUCN is aimed at actually bridging that gap between the poverty and disaster risk reduction in a more tangible ways, from the point of view of managing your natural resources or natural capital, as well as dealing with residual risk as they happen.
What do you consider the way forward in linking climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction?
I think one of the main things that we need to look at is that these are the two concepts and two sets of principles that essentially deal with people's livelihoods and environment. So for us to actually bring these two principles, concepts, international instruments would mean that we need to develop a common set of language, a common set of principles which the countries can adopt. One of the challenges that developing countries, and in particular in the Pacific Islands, we face is that we are bombarded with very many different terminologies. We are bombarded with essentially concepts which may be talking about the same challenges that we have, but we have to face with different concepts and different definitions. It will be good if we can actually bring these two international instruments, international concepts and principles together in a way that the countries can then adopt and implement. And that is the real challenge that we face in the region, particularly since our capacity is fairly limited.
Why is this IPCC special report important, and how will it help governments deal with climate change and disaster risk?
It is important because it's actually, for the first time, the two schools of thoughts, or two different groups of people, both scientists, managers, and the communities are coming together to try and resolve the differences and build on the similarities of the two approaches that we're dealing with.
I'm going to ask one follow-up question. How do ecosystems help to reduce disaster risk?
If you think about our presence on this earth, we have got earth which is considered to be a spaceship. It's limited. We have got the natural endowments, which would be our ecosystems, and we all rely on our natural environment to support us in our livelihood. At the end of the day, to improve human livelihoods and to sustain human livelihoods, we'll have to ensure that that natural capital, which is our environment and our natural resources, are conserved. To meet our needs and aspirations, we'll have to draw on our natural endowments or natural gift. And if we do not sustainably manage our environment, and which means ecosystem-based management, we will not be able to support the growing population, and we will definitely not be able to sustain the community livelihood which they're all aspiring for. So ecosystem-based adaptation really is about looking at nature and ensuring that nature and natural resources are sustained to support our well-being. Just to give you one example, when a natural system is not sustained, we find that the community's vulnerability increases. Take forestry. When you have got forest degradation, then of course we know what happens when you've got extreme weather events in terms of rainfall. Rainfall runoff increases. You tend to get landslides. You tend to get silting of rivers. You tend to get coastal coral reefs being degraded. So if we do not maintain that upstream ecosystem, then effects that would of course mean that our livelihoods will be compromised. So ecosystem-based adaptation is extremely important. I'll give you another example. Ecosystem-based adaptation also means conserving our biodiversity. And we all know that many of our medicines, food, fiber, etc., depend very much on what we have extracted. By not conserving our biodiversity would mean that we will not have those very species, plant, animals, both on land and on sea, available to provide us with the medicine. So what that would mean is that ecosystem-based adaptation would also mean that we conserve that resources, and that can then provide us with the knowledge as well as the building material for our future needs. Another dimension of ecosystem-based management that many agriculturalists would be very familiar with is that of where the genetic material has been used by people to create different hybrids. Now, if we do not conserve our natural ecosystems, which means that we do not conserve our biodiversity, we will not have those building materials to create new hybrids, new varieties that can cope with changing climatic conditions. You can talk about just about any one example: drought resistant, salt tolerant, heavy dependent on water flow or flooding. Those kinds of crops will not be available. And as we know that if we do not have focus on that kind of sustainability, then of course we would not have, the food production would not be there to meet the needs of growing population on this world.